My name is Patrick Völker. I'm Google Web Designer evangelist here for EMEA. I'm also working for GTech Ads as creative specialist. And well, this is me. And now let's flip over to the slides. So slides are visible. Hi. So as introduced some seconds ago, I'm Google Web Design Evangelist and GTech Creative Specialist located in Hamburg. So I recently was told that my English sounds a little bit squared. Sorry for that. I hope everybody will understand. Otherwise, feel free to ask some questions in the comments, especially later after the session, after the main slides and after the main demonstrations. I'm happy to answer the questions in the comments or on the live chat. So this is the agenda for today. It looks a little bit different than the one that I've sent around. I've clustered a little bit. First of all is Google Web Designer for designers, where I want to introduce into Google Web Designer, show, and this is the live part, where which I actually feel the most, because like last time, things might go wrong, crossing fingers that it won't. So I show a basic banner creation, then I'll have a look at GWD Components, and then the dynamic banner demo, which might be interesting in days of data-driven programmatic advertising. So we are creating here a little template, uploaded it to DV360, so very advertising related. And then the second part is focusing a little bit more on developers, still interesting for designers, but it's going a little bit deeper. We'll have a look at the Google Web Designer API. I will also talk a little bit about how Google Web Designer works in the background, why Google Web Designer is also, for me, the first tool of choice, actually. And then we'll have a look how to going a little bit more into interactive media. So we will create a little mini game within hopefully 20 minutes, just to show you how easy it is using just a few lines of code. And then as the grand finale, I will show some demos, means some projects that has been done with Google Web Designer. Some of them you will also find the download links, so you will be able to download them and recapture what has happened there, how we have developed them, and so on. And then finally, most of you might not know, but together with Adobe PhoneGap, you can also easily create real mobile native apps with Google Web Designer and PhoneGap. I will give you a quick tutorial how to do this. And then finally, what's next? A little bit preview about the next version will be released within the next 2 or 3 weeks of Google Web Designer. Yeah, that's the agenda for today. And now let's start. First of all, for those who haven't downloaded yet, Google Web Designer can be found on www.google.com/webdesigner, and then you just can easily download it. Finally, end of last year, it has come out of beta. This was, I know from many meetings with developers and creators, that the beta was something that most people were concerned about. But no worries. Google Web Designer, since its release 3 or 4 years ago, it has become really, really stable and really, really advanced. We will see that later, and it won't crash that easy as it used to be in the first 4 or 5 months. Sorry. So this will be now a banner, a small automotive one with 2 pages, means we have a start animation with the car moving, a little bit zoom effect, animation, and so on. And then if the user is clicking on the banner, there will be shown a video. So a little bit rich media here. And now let's start. So actually, just reduce sizes here a little bit, the screen. So first of all, for those who have never used Google Web Designer before, there are 2 versions to create a banner, or an active interactive animation, or whatever you want to do. I will mostly focus on the term banner, of course, because this is the most important topic for us, of course. So, for example, we have the template gallery where you can create, for example, banners for app install, have a look what the templates look like, or banners for display and video and so on, and check them. Then you have a menu here and see some different templates. You just click on them and they will open in Google Web Designer, and everything you need to do is then just replace texts or images and so on. So really, really basic. But the cool thing about Google Web Designer is that actually you won't need templates, because if you're using Google Web Designer, if you create animations, interactive apps, and so on from scratch, it is so easy. I will show you in a few seconds how easy it is. So first of all, this is the menu from the very beginning. So you can you have the choice between creating banners. AMP HTML banners means for accelerated mobile pages. You know, sometimes there are AMP pages and the content is really, really low file size, but then there's a banner loading with 200K, and this doesn't make sense, of course. So there's also a mode where you can create very, very small sized banners. Then, of course, because we're talking about ads, expandables and interstitials. But of course, you can also do just basic HTML with pages, custom scripts, and so on, sheets, JavaScript, XML, and so on. For this case, of course, we would go for banner. I just call this now YouTube Livestream Demo, Google Web Designer Designer. Here we are. The environment, there are several ones. One is display and video 360. Then there is Google AdMob, there is Google Ads, and there is non-Google Ad. The non-Google Ad is maybe really important, because many think if they're using Google Web Designer, they are really bound to the Google marketing platform. But actually they aren't. Actually, you can just create your own animations and implement it in your website, or copy the code and use them somehow, or even use it for another ad server. Then you just create pure HTML or JavaScript code, and then you just go into the source code and add your own whatever tracking options that you need for this ad server, and then you can upload it for this. So display and video 360 is also for studios. So this includes the enabler and all the rich media functions, and whatever you create in Google Web Designer actually will automatically be tracked. Means if you're using pages, pages will be tracked. If you're using video players and so on, and the banners live, and then you have a look at reporting, you will see there will be reporting about has the user muted the video, replayed, and so on. So all the components that we will see later, they also do automatically tracking, and so it's easier to have a proper reporting later. Google AdMob is environment if you go for in-app advertising, and Google Ads is if you go directly, if you want to create your own banners without any agency and upload them to the Google Display Network. And then, of course, the non-Google Ad, as mentioned before. So in this case, we go for display and video. The dimensions will be an MPU, 300 by 250 pixels. Of course, we have several sizes customized and so on. You can also go for responsive banners if you like. Here is a responsive layout. If you click on this, then the stage will always adapt to the slot size or the window size, depends on where you publish the creative. So in this case, we want to have a fixed stage size. Then we have a look at the animation mode. There's a quick mode and there's an advanced mode. Quick mode is, let's start with quick mode. It's very similar maybe if you're used to video editing, like Pinnacle, for example, and there is a simple mode. Then in the timeline, actually, you can see there is a first scene, there will be another scene, and so on. And you define the transitions between both. Means if I have an asset on stage and I move it from left to the right, maybe we can start with something like that. Let me just drop an image on the stage. Where is it? Banner, automotive. Let's take this city background and close it again. Put this here on the position. And just for introducing now, don't worry about what I'm doing here at the moment. It's just for introducing the basic mode. Is if I have this background image invisible at the very beginning, and then I add a new screen and make it visible again. Then you can see there is, it's very small here on the screen. It says 0.5 seconds. We can make this a little bit longer. Let's make it 2 seconds that we can see it better on the streaming. And if I now say play from the very beginning, you can see it's transitioning from one state to another. That's the very, very basic mode. So you can push, pull anything on, drag it on the screen, and then it will move positions and so on. So, but this is just the thanks. This is just the very basic mode. If you are used to Adobe Flash or other animation tools, of course, there's also the timeline, and you can flip into the timeline if you click on here. And now you can see that this is our image that I dropped on the stage, has a timeline very similar that you know from other tools. But instead of keyframes, we have related to times, means seconds, half second, 1 second, and so on. And then you can just easy move around the animations and so on. Okay, but first of all, before we go into animation and so on, just let me please introduce into Google Web Designer what it can do. So we have on the left, there is the toolbar, which offers just, if I select this, I can move the objects around and so on. Here, this is for moving things together, turning, moving. And then we have, this is maybe one of the most important ones, is a container tool, where if I draw something like this on the stage, it is actually an empty container, or if you have a look at the source code, it will be a div. And with this div, you can, of course, do whatever you like, fill it and so on. And we might use this later, especially for the game, because this is, if you're coming from Flash, a div may behave like a sub-movie clip later. Then, of course, we have a drawing tool, but to be honest, it's something that I don't use very often. Actually, what we're doing here is using an oval or a rectangle tool. Then it draws it like as an SVG. And if you're using the pen tool, then it will draw on the canvas. But it's very basic. Actually, if you are into advertising and do animation with CSS and Google Web Designer, the most things you will do is actually create the assets with maybe Photoshop or GIMP or whatever software you're using. Use it already, save it down as in the standard size that you will need for the banner, in the optimized size. Maybe also push it through Tiny Panda and then Tiny Ping, and then download it with the right sizes. So maybe this is the main difference to other animation tools that also have included some drawing tools. Google Web Designer is actually just a tool which really focusing and has the biggest performance on animation, and it gets the best out of it. Of course, as you saw here, you can draw a little bit, but the drawing options are that basic that I really recommend using another tool, because Google Web Design is not made for it. It's just for easing the way how you animate things on your banner, project, whatever. We have a text tool, of course. We will use it later for headlines and so on. And then also for the gradient, filling, stroking, which size the outlines and so want to have. And then we have a rotation tool, means I can rotate the stage from somehow, and also rotate it in the 3D environment. This might be useful maybe later when I show you some great demonstrations, what can be done with it. You can move it with the move tools. So actually, this is just about the perspective, how you have a look on the banner or on the stage here. So then, of course, the big part in the middle is our stage, already in the size that we defined before. For each tool that I'm selecting here, in this case, the transform tool, I have some options here. I can align them by clicking on the banner, or on the buttons, aligning on top, and so on and so on. If I have several images on the stage, this is the buttons where I just sort them, put them on top or on the bottom, and so on. As mentioned before, this is the timeline here below, and then on the right side, this is maybe the most important window where we have all the chances to change everything. So for example, my image that I've dropped already in the stage, I can give it a name. I scroll to the top and say this is our background image. And if I press enter now, you can see on the timeline that it has also now been named background image, and it's maybe better for an overview later. So just imagine if we have 20 assets on the stage and all of them are mentioned, or all of them are named GWD _ image 1 _ image 2 and so on, then this is getting horrible. So it's always good to give the assets on the name a name on the stage. Then we have position and size. Means if I put the asset a little bit to the left or to the right, you can see there are two versions. One is the top left position, which you might know for the developers, which is the top left position for container. Means if I just resetting this here, if I put the position on left 50 pixels and from top maybe in percentage to 50%, then this is the gap between the source, the origin here on the top left of the stage to this one. People in the first 1 or 2 years very often tried to animate with top left, but this is CSS animation, and so this started really flickering a lot and even started and began to crash Google Web Designer, because animating with top left is always not so good thing. That's why there is the translation and rotation scale window. So if I put this back, you can see now the top left has stayed here, but it has moved back to -50 pixels and -155. Means starting from the original point of the asset, whatever I move then now, especially here now on keyframes, will then move in relation to the origin, not of the stage, but to the origin of the image. So let's just, we don't want to animate the background image, of course. We just put it here. So what we want to do now is, let me just drag another asset on the stage. Let's go for the race car. Where is it? No, this is not. This one, the white one. Just put in a stage. It's a little bit too large now. So what I'm doing now with this car, for example, is I want to scale it down a little bit. That's why I mark here and pull my mouse pointer a little bit down. And you can see now that it is decreasing or increasing depending on if I'm moving my mouse cursor up and down. So let's make around the size that it fits on a stage here. Okay, make it a little bit smaller maybe at the beginning. And also what we want to do is we don't animate, we don't fade in now our background image, but we want to kind of zoom it in. So let's the background image, make it visible again. This is what we're doing here in the fill stage. So this is the style. Fill is the background image. There are values from 0, which is invisible, to 0.5, which is 50% visible, and fully visible is the value 1. And then we can, of course, if it's we can change some backgrounds and so on here. If it's overflow visibility, if it's visible or not, if it's hidden, and so on. All the things that you usually as a developer can add directly to the CSS, to the styles. Also apply a border, whatever, control the margins and the padding, if the corners should be rounded, and so on. So the properties window actually is very important for everything that we are dragging and marking on the stage. Later we will see there will also be an event panel if we want to add some interaction to it. Also, if we want to go for dynamic, so it's like a little bit, feels like a breadcrumb a little bit, but actually it's just a horizontal navigation between some windows. These are not all the windows, but the most important ones that I'm working with. So if we have a look here at the window, there are several modes. There's a text tool, there's a specific color tool where you can save the colors that you need and just reload them. There's a special CSS window. If you are missing something that you cannot create in Google Web Designer, just go to the CSS panel and change it there. There's a library also. Let's have a look at the library. If I click on it, you can see it here. Just close this. It's a little bit more visible. It's our library here, and you can see all the images that I dragged on the stage are already visible here. At the moment, I don't need it. That's why I close it, because the properties, now we want to start with the development here. The properties is way more important. So from the very beginning, positions are already defined. I give the car a name. Just call it car. And what we want to do now is zoom out of the background image. Means the initial zoom should be a little bit larger than the screen, like this. And after, let's make it 2 seconds, it should be original size again. Means if we have a look at the animation here on the timeline, this will zoom out. Okay. And at the same time, we want to zoom in the car. Means at the very beginning, we want to have our car maybe somehow here. And at the keyframe after 2 seconds, Let's have a look. It should be this position. And now have a look at the translation, rotation, and scale. You can see that those values change wherever I put them. I move the car a little bit, and you can see that not the top and left position is moving, but the translation. So maybe talking about those little panels, this is very important. The first line is about the position, which is from the original minus 170 pixels in X direction and so on. Z is if I move it in front, you can see it's zooming in a little bit. The difference is that the layer is now moving more or less towards the eye. Means if I rotate 3D again, you can see the car is now in front of the stage. This is cool, not at the moment if you're doing a 2D animation, but later if you are creating something in 3D, which actually Google web designers really, really great in. I will show you some examples. Then this is our rotation tool. Means if I rotate here something, come on, this is now rotating in 3D environment along the 2D axis. The car is now vanishing because it's actually half of the car is behind the screen. This doesn't make sense now. So let's rotate maybe through a different axis. For example, the Z axis, its rotation like here. So this is the 2D rotation. We don't need this here, but we want to the car make it a little bit larger again. So the effect will be no rotation anymore. Going back to this tool. If I mark the car now, put it a little bit more on this focus here. So let's have a look on the scrubber bar, how the animation looks like. Okay, I'm really happy with that. This is how it will look on the animation. Let's have a look at the preview. At every time, I can check in my browser how the banner is looking like. If I'm going here, I have the chance to select between Chrome, Firefox, and Safari. If I preview now, then Chrome is opening. Where is it? Okay, here's the animation. Just reload it and check how it looks like. Okay, so the car's a little bit mid-cut at the very beginning, but it's okay just for the demo. Now let's add a headline. I'm just creating it here. I called this car the new Maturo or something like that, Maturo. This is, of course, Times New Roman is not very fancy. That's why here on the top menu, you can see I added now a text field. And as soon as I go to the text field tool, the menu here changes and I can add some more features. So for example, I need a proper font here now, which is not maybe that common. Let's make it as fancy as possible. The category is, for example, the display ones. Then we'll show some more fancy fonts like this one. Let's take this one. I say OK. And it has already changed. What else I want to do is I change the color to whatever, red or something like that we can see later better. And also make it, of course, larger. And we also want to animate this now. Means as soon as the car and the background image have zoomed, this is the new Maturo text field has appeared here in the timeline. I want to make it fly in, maybe within 1.5 seconds. That's why I create a new keyframe here. And if I move the headline now over here on the screen, you can see there is now a motion path. I can also change the motion path to a Bézier curve, for example. Won't need it here, but because it should fly in just directly. But you can, of course, do fancy Bézier curved animations. So all the animations have been linear so far. What is a little bit more interesting is, as you maybe also know from other animation tools, if we right-click on the transition here, what I'm doing now, there are several versions like step start, step end, means that it will stay on its position and then just appear at the end of the animation or at the beginning. Then also, of course, we have easing, in, out, and so on. And we have also custom easing options. I'm choosing this now. Easing option, and then you can see there's a small window where I can define the process, how it should animate. So that it's like a time from left to the right at the beginning. It's very slow, then it's accelerating, and then it's here you can see a little bit curve, which is too high. Actually, it's about 110%, means it's over the position and then it's bouncing back. That's something that we can check here now for the animation. So just grab slowly from left to the right, slow, it's getting faster, faster. And then it's moving back a little bit, but just very little bit. Okay. I saw here, okay, just make background car, everything is in. Okay, good, and the background tool is here just to be safe, to make it really visible because it had vanished in the meantime. So now it's working properly, great. Okay, good. So this is our very, very basic animation. You can now just imagine that many things, all the animations, actually how they can be solved. What we're doing now is we are adding a very basic button. So for example, there's only a little space, but I'm adding now a div container here where I just want to create a button, a custom one that I create directly in Google Web Designer, and the label which says start. And if I click on the start button, or maybe if the label is maybe video, then it should show the video that I've seen maybe in the demo before. And also there will be an exit. So actually we have two buttons, a background exit, or the click-through, the background click-through, which will cover the whole stage. And then there will be this button that I'm creating now. So first of all, the design of the button, maybe the size is already fine. Let's add a gradient. Let's have a look here. Let's make it really red. From red to a little bit more dark shadow. This is good. I'm happy with that. Maybe also add outline with curves. Maybe. Okay, so it looks very 90s now, but it's doing the job. So this will be our button. You saw that we have this drawing tools, the fill tool and the gradient tool. I'm now choosing the gradient tool because I want to have it a little bit more like a shadow. So what I can do now is, if you look close enough, that the button, the gradient is turning around from left to the right, to the right to the left, and to the bottom. I can turn it to every angle, actually. I just want to have it like this, that it looks like that light is coming from top and we have a shadow at the bottom. So usually I want to also, like very similar to the headline, I want to make the button fly in from left to the right. Now imagine we need at least a text label which says video, and we have to animate this both at the same time. Just imagine we have now a banner with maybe 5 buttons, then the timeline is getting really, really large. That's why, first of all, I don't call this here button. I will call this button wrap. Because what I'm doing now, and I already told you before a little bit, that we have the chance to do some sub-movie clips. If I double click on this now, have a look at the bluish line, the outside line. You can see that it has turned red, and you also have maybe noticed that the timeline has emptied. What we are having now is that this is now our new stage. I can create a label in here, and if I draw something on the label, video, make it Patua one again, make this one now color white, and maybe center in the middle, and put a little bit back. You have a look at the position now. The top left position is now, if I put it here to 0, 0, top left, you can see the label is now not 0, 0 on the origin of the stage, but on the origin of our new sub-movie clip, which is the outlined red one. So this is our label here, label name, and just put it a little bit more on the button center. So, and we can animate this now. If we go back, this is like a background navigation here on the top left bottom. You can see div button wrap. This is our button wrap here. We are inside this one because it's marked yellow. If I click back on div, we are back on the stage, and you can see the timeline will show the rest of the stage again. So I want to animate now this button at the same time like the headline. It should fly in like this, and I just move the button over here, and you can see now that the label is moving exactly like the button itself. So make it ease in, is out, so it's easy. And if we animate this now on our stage, on our animation in Google Web Design directly, when I press the play button here on the left, you can see moving the card, zooming in, and headline and buttons are moving in. Well, this is not very fancy, not the most beautiful banner, of course, but I guess you get the idea. So the problem is now, now we want to do is add some interaction. Means at the moment, it's just an animation and the user cannot do anything. Especially when you have a look at the browser, you can see there's animation here. But even that there is a button, I can't do anything. You can see, maybe I can mark this one, but there's no, the usual pointer is not visible. So, and this is what I'm doing now with our components. So you can see on the right, I was mostly using the properties panel. I now flip to the components panel. If you don't like them, by the way, like I rebuild them, you can just drop them here and drop them there and have a look here. But actually, to be honest, I prefer having the long panels over here and use them full size, full height, and just select between all of those. Components means this is something that you can drag on a stage and it's already kind of pre-built, so you don't have to code or worry about it. Will definitely work. One of the most basic ones is the tab area, which I will now drag on the stage. This is actually just an area where if I just, let's make it put here on the bottom of the stage. If I preview now in the browser, as long as there's a tab area, you can see now nothing's happening here with the mouse pointer, but if I go down, you can see the mouse pointer is changing to the mouse pointer, so that actually it tells me I can click here something. This is what the tab area is actually doing. It just changes the pointer. But we need this, so we put it here directly on the stage. Back to the properties window. Come on, open here. So position will be 0, 0. Start will be 300 to 250. Full screen, and because I've moved it, it has changed here. So actually it's covering now. This will be our tab area component, or I call it button click-through, button CTR. And if I'm going now to the events panel and add a new event here, by clicking on the plus, you can see now the tab area is appearing. So what can I do in the window? In the window, I can react on events that the user is doing. For example, if the user is clicking with the mouse, it's doing a mouse down event, mouse up, and so on. Or if the user is on the mobile screen, for example, then you can catch if the user is starting to touch ends, if the touch will be moved, and so on. And so you can actually make your banner animation or interactive app behave different depending on the environment that the banner is working on, mouse or touch. In this case, we want to make it as easy as possible. That's why there's a tab area, and there's only one event that is common with both, is the touch click event. So if the user is touching or clicking on our tab area that we just dragged on the stage, we have now the options of the following actions. For example, the CSS. I could add some styles. For example, if I click on this, select one or select the background image and give it a specific style. If I add here property, make it whatever, display none or something like that. Going back after the click event, this is not what we want to do now. It was just what can be done here. We can have a look at the timeline. For example, pause, play, toggle play, go to and play. Maybe there's something we can do now here as an example. I go to toggle and play means if I click on the background tab area, then it should pause. If I click once more again, it should play again. The receiver is page number 1. This might be interesting a little bit later because we have a chance to have several pages. And then I say, okay, let's have a look at the browser, how the preview looks like now. If I'm clicking, you can see the animation has paused. Now I'm clicking again in 3, 2, 1, 0. It's continuing, and 3, 2, 0. Now 3, 2, 1, 0. It is pausing, and if I click once more again in 3, 2, 1, 0, the animation stops. Finally continues until it's on the end frame. So this is something that will maybe be useful if we go later to game development. We don't use what we want to do actually finally is we want to create an exit or a click-through. That's why there's an option here for Google Ad. And the Google Ad option says I can exit ad. Exit ad is the Google Marketing Platform term for click-through. So if I click on this, the receiver will be the ad itself. I give it a name for the exit. In this case, it makes sense calling it the background exit. And the URL should be www.google.com Web Designer. There is no expanding and so on. That's why I don't need to collapse it here. And there is also no media playing at the moment. That's why I don't need it here. And the collapsed page is on exit. So we just actually need just the first 2 lines of the options. I say, OK. And if I preview this now on the browser, you can see that if I click on it, the exit's actually working and it directs me directly to the Web Designer download web page. So, OK, at the moment is the problem. If we have a look at the preview again, if I click on the button, it's exactly the same exit. So because the tab area is covering. What we're doing now is we move the button wrap, which is here on the second timeline, which is below or is under the tab area. We move it to the top. I can do this by just moving here and change this, or using the buttons over here. If I click on this one now in 2 seconds, then you can see that the button wrap will move down again. So here we are, down, down, down. But of course, we need it on top. That's why I'm clicking here. So if even that the button is now on top, you can see now that it's actually not really clickable because we need also something like a tab area in here. This is what I'm doing now. In the components, I drag the tab area again inside here, make it full size. This will be our button video, 0 position top left, and then full size of my button, 100% width and 100% height. And now you can see that if I move the scrubber here, that the tab area will also move. And so I don't need to animate 2 or 3 things at the same time, but have it just in one container. So going back to the main page. At the moment, we have actually full working banner. It works if I click on exit. It won't click if I click on video. Except of the exit, nothing's happening because I have to reassign the exit now that I'm doing here in the events panel. So for this and properties, be sure that the button is really on top. So and in the events panel now, I do nearly exactly the same. Wait a minute, sorry, my fault. Before we can do something with the button, we need, of course, an additional page. And this is what we're doing now. You can see here on the bottom, this is always named page 1. This is the first page ever. If I click the drop-down menu, you can see here now there is a plus, and this is a copy duplicate page icon. So actually I can use a copy of the page with exactly all the animations. In this case, I just want to create a new page here. And what I'm doing now is I go back to the library. Now I need it just for a short time. And I take this background image, drop it here again. I can close the library again. Put it here on the screen and just give it a name again. Never forgetting this. Background image page 2. Or page, actually, Google Web Designer is always naming page 1_1. We can directly give it a name. If I click just next to the stage, you can see here on the page we have a chance to, let's call this video page. And you can see now that if I name it here, then it will also be named here video page. On the page 1, give it a name, start page. And now we can easily flip between start and video page. So, but going back to the first page, we want to assign an event now to our video button. This is what we're doing now. I click on plus for a new event. You can see now it has added a lot of things. Button wrap is the one that I want to click on. There was a tab area within the button wrap. And if I click on it, then I want to make the page tag go to page. On the page tag, go from page start page to video page. There are several transitions. It could be going immediately. So if I click on it, then the video will be, there will be video in some seconds. The transition will be immediately. It could be also a slide, means that one frame is pushing the other away. It could also be a push. No, sorry, the slide is that it's like a shade on your window. if you're doing down the shades, that the new image is covering, the new page is covering the old one. There's a push one, which acts like a gallery. So the old page is moving maybe to the left and the other one is coming from the right. In this case, we just want to animate a fade transition. Duration should be 1 second. And easing should be linear, but it's also like with all the animations I can use ease in out, for example. Direction doesn't make sense for fade. This just makes sense if you have a push or slide effect, if the animation is coming from left to the right. We'll have a closer look later at the game's development. I say OK here. Let's have a look how this looks like in the browser preview. My fault. This is one of the things that went wrong now in the live demo. You can see now if I've clicked on the video button and then there was a transition, it shows the page _1_1, actually the video page, which has faded over here now. And we can now create the video page. For this, I go to the components and have a look at all the media ones. We have audio player, video player. In this case, I just want to load a YouTube video. Let's make it that size, maybe a little bit. Doesn't need to be that exact. And then I go to the properties again. And this is maybe something that is also very useful. The component is now our GWD YouTube _1 video. I just keep the name now. You can see now that in the properties, as soon as I click on something on the stage, the properties panel changes. You can see now that there's a YouTube properties panel. So I can give this YT player a name. And the URL should be http www.youtube.com/watch V is, hope I get this right, it's lowercase o 6 uppercase z h lowercase g uppercase t 9 and everything is lowercase now s x w. So this will be video that I've just copied from a video that I've watched at YouTube before. I just go to the URL bar, copy and paste the URL and put it here. There will be, I can decide, okay, it has loaded. This is the video that will be shown, a car driving in a city. The autoplay is set to none automatically, but I can also go for standard or preview. Let's go for preview here. The preview duration can be defined as maybe 15 seconds. The controls should not be visible, can also be auto hide after a second. And the progress bar, well, it's not visible, so I don't need it here. Should be muted at the very beginning, because YouTube videos actually in advertising always should be muted at the very beginning so that people don't get distracted or annoyed if a banner is on the publisher's website and he's focusing on the content and there's loud sound or something like that. No annotations, nothing related should be shown. Title shouldn't also be shown. I can also add a start position. I keep it at 0 now. There are also some advanced properties. So for example, if there's a button that should be allowed that the video will be shown in full screen, and extra player parameters that can be well, if you need more information about extra player parameters, just have a look at the YouTube embedding page. What else can be done, especially with the JavaScript API. You have a little bit even more control about that. Okay, so let's have a look at a preview, how it looks like. So this is our banner. I say click on the video button and the video is appearing and it's starting. If I click play now, it should even play with sound. I can't hear it now on the screen because my mic is on. But actually, this is how it works. And we have now our very first, very basic rich media banner. So let me close some of the tabs here. We don't need of them. So, okay, this is how actually very basic animation works in Google Web Designer. So let's go back to the presentation. So it's loading my presentation, the new material. Actually, you can see the animation, how it works like. This was now very, very basic. Yeah, just about creating banners. Now, this is just a screen here. I told you about there are some cool components, and you can see them now here on the right. If you click on the components panel, for example, there's a 360 gallery. Before I now start to demonstrate them all in live, I just want to introduce what they can do. All of them are really easy to handle. So like the YouTube layer component, where I just drag the component on the stage and then add the URL. There's something very similar with galleries, for example. So first of all, we have the 360 gallery. It is called, or is named 360 gallery because most of the time it will be used by users to have several pictures of the same product from different angles, and then you can slide with the mouse pointer from left to the right, and then it has the visual effect of turning the objects around, but actually it's just a video player. So what else can be done, for example, is if you could show a banana, for example, and the pictures of the animations of the banana would be how it gets unwrapped. And if you then load everything into the 360 gallery and you move the cursor from left to the right, then it would look like that the banana gets automatically unwrapped, something like that. So it doesn't definitely need to be 360 degrees gallery, but it's actually just like an image slider or a video animation slider where the user has full control about the single frames. Then there is the carousel gallery, which looks a little bit like, maybe you know from Apple, the iTunes cover flow a little bit. The options here are also pretty cool. You can directly you can change nearly everything. How many images there should be, which angle they should be, how much 3D should there be, if it's 90 degrees, how close the images should be like, and so on. And there's another component, which is the swipeable gallery, which is very similar to the carousel gallery, but this is now a real gallery where just one image sticks to another. The gallery is, how you solve this is also really easy. You just drag the gallery on the stage, and then you just add the images with a small panel where you then just drop the images that you like, give them in the right order, and then it will be visible on the stage. Really cool. Another option is the gesture component, for example. I'm just introducing the most basic ones. We also have some really fancy ones. This gesture, for example, component is like very, very similar to the tap area, but you can catch other events instead of tapping. For example, swiping left to the right and so on, and then you can react on that. So, for example, you could create your own gallery when the user is swiping right. Then you start the animation on the gallery and so on. Or maybe this is something that we might use for games or something like that, if we want to control the user by swiping, pinching, zooming, double-clicking, and so on, everything involved in this gesture component. Here, hover and track start, track and tap, swipe left, and so on and so on. Many events that can be caught with this component. Then, of course, there is a Google Maps component. This is how it looks like, very similar. Maps, you might have known, has now moved as service to the cloud, which means that you need a key for that. So at the moment, if you're just dragging the maps and also the Street View component on the stage, it will ask for a key. And if you don't have a key, then unfortunately you can't use it here. But of course, it's really, really cool if you use the maps component, for example. If you have created a banner which is targeted, if someone is living in London, for example, and you want to, it's a Google ad and you want to show where the next Google store or Google office is, then you just give the coordinates or address of the things that the user is looking for. And then depending on the position where the user is with GPS, you can really directly navigate him to the selected target. And then, of course, we have several media components. You've already seen the YouTube player here. This is how it looks like. Of course, there's also a video component where you then just directly upload your videos here, and also an audio component if you need some music or something like that on stage. Okay, these are just the most basic ones. And now let's have a look how to use Google Web Designer and dynamic assets for DVD display and video 360. Chapter number 2. So, for this, I don't need this anymore. I create a new file. I call this YouTube Livestream GWD Dynamic TV 360 Demo on Wednesday. Anyhow, it's Tuesday. No, just kidding. We don't need such a long name. TV 360. Let's keep it here. Same sizes, just to make it as easy as possible. I say OK, and here is our stage again. Of course, I flip to the enhanced to the advanced timeline. Now let's have a look which files I need for this. You've seen in the preview that it will be retail related. So what we want to do is we have a background, we have those gifts. Let's say it will be maybe for Black Friday coming soon, or for end of season, end of December holiday, where everybody is giving presents with the family and so on. And we want to just replace now if a product is for women or men, and then show the product. It's just basic, of course. It's if we target, usually we shouldn't go for a gender or so, or how's it called? Demographics. There are bad interests. Could also be it's for example, if it's for men, if he's interested into whatever cosmetics, and if the woman is a fashionista, something like that, that we can just replace on the interest of what the user has, and replace the products. So this is what we're doing now. Going for retail, I take this background image. I take this asset here. So make this is now visible, not stretch to fill, but make it crop image to fill, that it's, sorry, this one, crop image to fill. So it's just on the size. Put this here, the product, and also there were some gifts in the background. The deco gifts, put them here. And maybe the product is a little bit very large. Let's reduce the size a little bit. In this case, put it here in front. Yeah, that's it. And now I add a text label. This will be maybe the headline. I call it headline. And for man, make it fancy font. I need a fancy font. Fredoka 1. Now Poiré 1 looks better. More cosmetics, whatever. So make it fat maybe. It's a little bit easier to read. Make it, of course, larger for men, and black is already fine. So for men, it's hard to read, but I guess you get the idea, and I also guess it's visible on the screen. So what we want to do is actually now we want to replace this product and this label. So we already gave the label a headline, a title, and then we need this as a product. This will be our key visual to be replaced later. This will be just our decoration. We won't replace this. We could also, but just to make it as easy as possible, we don't need here to replace it. Background image. All of them are named. We have them here: headline, key visual, decoration, background image. Let's make some basic animation just within 1 second for the key visual. This should be faded in at the very beginning. Make it invisible. Just because we can, that you can see we are not stuck on static banners, but we can also, let's also maybe zoom it in at the end, like this, and make it easing options, pop again, pop and slow. Let's have a look how this looks like now. Product is fading in and popping in at the moment, slowing down. Okay, this is good. And this will also be with the other assets that we will upload later. Of course, so that we are allowed to upload it to Studio or GWD in this case, we need to add the component, the click-through. This is very similar to what we've done before, of course. It's the, where is it? Here, tab area, dragging on the stage. This is very similar to what we've done before. This will be the CTR button underscore CTR. Size is already right, position. So it's covering. And this is how our banner looks like in our browser. So you can see the animation here. There's a very small headline here now. Let's put this back on the screen so it's a little bit more, we can feel it better. Okay, so now we want to tell Google Web Designer that this will gonna be a dynamic banner. Means there is this dynamic tab over here, and I want to replace now the headline and the key visual. That's why I click on the plus here. And first of all, I have to define that it's a standard scheme. You can use customized scheme. This will be used for Studio and will be really advanced. For DWD60, we can go a little bit more basic and use the standard scheme here. The data scheme will be dynamic remarketing. So, and now I select from a drop-down, and now you will figure out why it's very, very important that you've named the assets, because otherwise it would be named background image, GWD image 1, GWD image 2, and so on. But now we know background image decoration. We want to replace the headline. Headline will be different. We won't change the color. We won't change the name. We won't change the opacity. We want to change the text content. That's it, text content. And now, because we are using dynamic remarketing, we have those predefined fields for each product. You know, maybe from banners that you've already created or that you at least have seen on the web, is when you have visited the website and you got retargeted, then you see maybe several similar objects that you might be interested in, and that's why we have several product images here. And these are all the things that we can now use and replace. So the text content should be, let's have a look which I could use for that, which field makes sense. The promo text, for example. We could also use price, maybe promo text, logo, image, disclaimer. Yeah, let's go for promo text. Promo text is fine. So, and if I upload this banner later to DWD60, then there will be a text field which will be assigned directly to this. Now, another binding, by clicking on this plus, I want to replace the key visual. I select GWD image key visual from the dropdown. And I want to change the source, of course. The source should be replaced with another image. Here's our source. And the promo text should be, let's take from a product here in this case, product 0. Let's take image URL. Good. And what else can be done? Can be done, for example, the headline we can replace with the color, another binding, P, headline, and we want to change the font color. And for font color, we go for, do we have a color here? Primary color here. Primary color, we select this, and that's it. Okay, if we have a look now at the browser, how it looks like, it will show a sample retail promo text over here and a sample feed image depending on a fake feed. And if you click here on drop down, you can see this will only appear if you're having a dynamic banner. If you go for no feed, you can see the original. And if we go for the Studio Dynamic Remarketing JSON feed, then you can see a sample feed image that will be replaced. And then publish it. So at the moment, it's just available to directly upload it to Studio or to Google Drive. As we want to upload it to DWD60, we will save it locally. Don't worry, in 2 or 3 weeks, with the next Google Web Designer release, there will be direct connection, a fourth line which says upload to display and video 360, and then it will appear in your account. So unfortunately, we have to save it locally until then. Of course, I want to add a border because nearly any publisher needs it. I want to flatten the files, of course, include the local files. Having all in one file is always good in advertising because of maybe loading issues which could happen. Product loading is always good, means that first, the banner will only fully be loaded or start to animate when the full website has been loaded before. Created zip is okay. Otherwise, if I don't create a zip, I have all the files on their own. I want to minify the code to save some file size. And I didn't use some groups here, so I don't need this. The prefix is just if it's targeting Android, all the browsers, or if I use Safari and so on, of course, we want to target them. This will add some additional lines of style code. Now I click Publish, and it has been saved as zip. Now let's go back. This is my DWD60 account here, PV for Patrick Völker test, and I want to create a new creative. For those who haven't seen DWD60 so far, this is our new minified version of Studio combined directly with GWD. We have some great formats here in the gallery where you then just click on it and replace all the assets that you need. Some of them are dynamic, but we want to, if I go for create, I can create a new one. Create from format gallery. This is the gallery that you've seen before, but I can also go upload with my own custom banner. This is what I'm doing here, HTML5 or image. I click on this one, and I name it YouTube Livestream Google, this is a way too long name here, training, YouTube Livestream Google Web Designer training, 2018, bam. So drag upload the file. So we are downloads. Where is my material? This is this one here, the last project I've created. This is the generated zip from Google Web Designer. I click on open. Good. It moves automatically to our dynamic part, which is add canvas. You will now see our banner immediately in a few seconds. In the meanwhile, I'm going for my additional images that I want to upload in here. Come on, load, load. Don't let me alone. Don't let me alone. Please, not today. Well, never, but. At the moment, I have no idea why it doesn't load. So let's then take a new one. We just pretend now we have created the banner that we've seen before here. Let's take the panorama one. Now this is loaded. So we just pretend now we have created this banner in Google Web Designer. Unfortunately, I have to improvise a little bit. What I'm doing now is this is the banner. It's empty now. If it would have worked uploading my Google Web Designer banner to Add Canvas, then you would have seen the background image and the gifts, and that's it. All the other dynamic things will be replaced by actually empty containers. So what we can do is now we upload a background image here. Banner demo assets, and where we are. Let me check assets. Let's go for this. This will be our background image. This would have been replaced our key visual, maybe with the other product. Okay, I'm very sorry about that. The only thing that I can change now is some text, very similar to what we've done before. GW rocks, and description, it really rocks. This one here. And then we can maybe change the color, make it pink somehow of the button. Click here, download Google Web Designer, something like that. And also talking about the style. If we go for style, we can change the color of the font, of course. And I need you now, because most of you are working creative agency, to be very, very fancy and show some fantasy. And just imagine how awesome our banner would have looked like if we would have been able to replace the assets now. So I'm closing this now. It would have looked something like that, unfortunately, or better, even looked have liked like that one. Okay, so going next now. This was a little bit for the designers. Now I want to go a little bit deeper and show things that maybe many don't know that can be done. And because Google Web Designer is also dedicated a lot of for developers. Actually, from the very beginning, Google Web Designer was always focusing on developers. Of course, the tool itself, the user interface, looks like a design tool, but you can get the most out of it if you're a real developer. So for example, you recognized before when it was about in the properties, if I do something invisible, changing the alpha from 0 to 1. Usually in animation tools, it's from 0 to 100%. In this case, this is related. This is developer knowledge. You can just flip from 0 to 1. And also the animation, because this is actually how JavaScript and style sheets work, the values are not from 0 to 100%, but from 0 to 1 with dotted steps. And the same also here, position and size. Many designers used to animate with position and size. And so this, and we'll have a look at this issue a little bit later. This caused a lot of trouble in some animations. If I faced some animations with huge images animated and rotated, and 6 or 7 of them at the same time, and they really broke down websites or the test preview site, because this is where, because the animation tool is Chrome actually, where Chrome actually broke down because the animation was too strong. And developers would have known that you animate always with those 9 fine translation, rotation, and scale options. So So that's why some of the values are developer related, and of course, it's more or less focusing on designers. If you're animating now, you see that it will automatically animate the translation and not the top and left anymore. However, so that's why let's go a little bit into the science of how browsers showing websites. You remember maybe 8 to 10 years ago, no, it's 10 years ago actually, when you were scrolling through a website, you remember using the mouse scroller. The website was scrolling, and at the bottom there was a white flickering and then showing the rest of the web page. This is because browsers used to render all those websites actually in real time. There was no need. People were just reading. Images were always static, and except of Flash plugins, something like that, there was no need to change the website all the time. Also, browsers were mostly used because we had low resolution on screens on full screen. So, but then there were some mobile phones, and you remember, and you know how you're using animations or websites today. You can scroll through websites, and there is no flickering anymore, and this is cool. And the reason behind it is that actually every browser, whether mobile browser or desktop browser, actually what we're having here is a full 3D engine. And this engine, actually, you already might have seen 3D animations, like, for example, the Play Maps Cube, a game with Google Maps as a Chrome experiment. What a browser actually is doing is a full WebGL or even OpenGL environment, where even the websites are drawn on 3D. Means, for those who are not so much into 3D development, to have the best non-flickering animation to achieve 60 frames per second, so that it's really fluent in your eyes, is that it's calculating everywhere invisible, and then as soon everything has been calculated, with calculating I mean the position where should each pixel be shown, then it will draw the image on a screen. And because if you would render a full screen all the time, it would flicker again. That's why 3D engines usually separate or split a website or split a frame or an image into several smaller images. In this case, you can see that just the red squares are animated and are updated. Means all those grayish on the left, on the right, they will always stay the same. They will just be copied from the cache, and the red ones are actually the ones that will be recalculated. And with this, we save, in this example, 50% of all calculating time, which is, of course, a lot. And what browsers actually do is they display all the content. So they go through the source code of the HTML5 page, figure out which is an element, which is an image, and try to figure out where parts will be changed. By the way, it's not just this grid that you can see, but browsers also figure out if there are layers covering. So actually the title here, the cube, which says a game about Google Maps, start playing, this is an extra layer that will be set on top on the page. And so this will be updated. And so we save a little bit more, about 10% more time, because it will cover now at least one single grid square that won't be displayed here. So this is how browsers actually work. It's a full 3D environment. And what they are doing is actually they are reading the source code and rendering everything on a 2D. You must imagine if you see a piece of paper in a 3D environment directly from top. So actually it's a 3D environment, but you just see it kind of flat. And this flat paper is actually your website. So it creates the graphics, all the tiles, and figures out, in this case, the red ones, which one will be animated and will be own layers. And the static ones, this will be the green ones. And if you just scroll the website now, everything it needs to do is just scroll the images, the position to the top, and add 4 more squares on the bottom. And if you scroll from top to the bottom, it of course will scroll down and add the 4 next images, squares here. The textures, actually called, the term is textures in 3D, will just add them here. And so it's really, really easy so that you can scroll on mobile devices. And this is actually how desktop browsers have evolved too. So if you can see this, by the way, if you call a website and then you go into the web console, and check for the rendering. Over here, you can say here paint flashing, layer borders, and frame per seconds. If you enable this frame per seconds, you can see how your website is performing on your animation. And if you enable paint flashing and layer borders, you can see there are small lines appearing here. This is where the squares. In this case, it's not squares, it's rectangles, which will be updated, which have the full size. Depends on the browser which way the squares are designed. I just made it a little bit more obvious here. So the green ones are those that will be just drawn. This is actually just images. Even if you see some text or something like that, this is just images. And when you see a cursor blinking somewhere, then immediately, like here on images, for example, this will be an additional layer. So if you see the mouse pointer and the mouse pointer is a cursor on the website, then the little cursor, maybe it's just 10 pixels high, will get an own layer which will cover the rest. So this is an animated banner, has its own layer. This is an animated banner, has its own layer, and this one. And this is how websites have become that fast. So the problem is now if we change a website, for example, reduce the size, like this one on the right, for each rendering, if it's whether it's initial or if you do some animation, there are 4 phases. One is recalculate, means it checks all if there's a new top left position, the width and height, like for example those texts here. Then it will also recalculate if, for example, this word without will drop to the next line. Then it will, there's a layout phase after it has recalculated all the sizes. Then it computes the new sizes and positions of each affected DOM element, only of those who are affected. Then finally, or not finally, third step is the paint phase, which means we have all those hidden images in the background that we don't see. But where Google will, the browser will then copy the images as layers, as textures on the website. This is the paint phase, where then it calculates and draws the pixels into the GPU layer. And then finally, the composite layers, which then just copies the layers on the screen. And of course, this takes time and time and time. And if you change the top and left position, then you have to go through all the process. Here we can see. So for example, these are common technologies for animating on websites. And I'm pretty sure some of you will also use GreenSock, for example. GreenSock is absolutely great if you are doing your own animations and you don't need a user interface for something like that. Then GreenSock is really checking if it for each possible technology to use the fastest one. If you're using JavaScript and Canvas, Canvas is just using paint and composite layers, but as soon as you draw something, you have to recalculate if it's not static. For example, if you're doing a little animal moving from left to the right, you have to recalculate each position with JavaScript, and then of course it will also be affected the CPU and not the GPU. CPU is the computer which takes care about JavaScript. GPU is the graphic chip on each mobile device. Even the first iPhone or the iPad had a kind of a graphic card on board on their own device, which is the GPU, and which helps the CPU getting rid of all the really hard calculating, strong calculating graphic works. CSS3 is can use from recalculates to composite layers everything. And if you're using JavaScript and just CSS, meaning CSS2, you have to recalculate all the time. That's why animations are getting really slow. That's why if you have the chance to use a tool, go for CSS3 or go for GreenSock, if there's a visible tool. So talking about CSS3, not all CSSE attributes or options are easy. You can see, for example, if you position background color, it still needs the paint phase and the composite phase. If you go for opacity and transform, it's just a composite phase. Means with opacity and transform, you save the 3 steps before recalculate, layout, and paint, and just go for composite. This is really fast, and this is actually the technology that Google Web Designer is using. All the others, even if it's just replacing background color with color and so on, this will take at least 2 phases. And actually, I used to be really a core developer. I even was using Notepad.exe on Windows years ago, and I even hated code completion because I was such a nerd. But the first time I saw Google Web Design, an early release, I was totally overwhelmed how easy you can use it and how the performance is. Because if you create something with transforms, it's really hard calculating. I'll show you in a second. Translate, rotation, scale, and metrics, and so on. This is actually just within this panel that we can use here. This is actually technology that will be used in Google Web Designer, and which is the fastest one. Now let's have a look how an animation in Google Web Designer looks like if we have a look at the source code. By the way, if you have a look at the code view, you can see source code like this. And this is the animation. We had now this little ball jumping from every corner to another one. So if you code this manually in CSS3, and CSS3 coding or designing with styles maybe really can be a pain in the ass. So the animation is now for each transition, it should move 1 second, means the full transition is 4 seconds. This is what we define here. So we have a play animation. This is our ball. This is the animation, which is linked GWD gen, whatever GWD keyframes to this animation, which is defined here. Then there is the length, 4 seconds. Animation should be linear. It should no delay at the beginning, 0 seconds. It should move eternally, normal animation, and should be animated forwards, no backwards. And so the animation link is here at the beginning. It's translate 3D, 0, 0, 0, position, no movement from the original position. So then after 1 second, which is 25% of 4 seconds, it should be 210 pixels on the right. Then after half of the time, it should be 210 pixels on the right, which is here, and then 165 pixels at the bottom, excuse me. And then after another second, it should move back to 0 pixels. This is this one here. Let me check here. 0 pixels here. Still 165 pixels on the X coordination, on the X coordinates. And then finally, after 4 seconds, it should move back to 0, 0, 0 here, and then it will restart. And you can definitely see the problem. We are not talking about keyframes here. We are talking about time, and we can't say something like that. After 1 second, it should be here. It's always about the percentage. You have to recalculate. Now, just imagine with 4 seconds, this makes sense. But imagine the first animation should be 1 second, but maybe 1.1. And we have now a time slot, which is 4.2 seconds, for example. Then you really have to recalculate weird numbers, and CSS then really is getting really annoying. And that's why Google Web Designer helped me a lot. What you can do, by the way, is just copy this code out of the code view and then drag it in your own website. And so Google Web Designer is not just for creating your animation on your own, but you can just create something and copy the code, and you don't need to embed it like an iframe or something like that. Now imagine how an animation would look like this. If it's just a basic linear animation like with the ball we saw seconds ago, and if this takes so much code, then of course an animation like this with those curves and Bézier and so on is getting even more complicated. So developers also want to get the most out of Google Web Design. That's why there's a good news. You can also use your custom code. And if you are a huge fan of GreenSock, for example, there's also an option to just implement your own GreenSock API, which is native, actually. So natively built, you don't have to go into the custom code or your code view and then have to add the link to GreenSock, but just go to, I guess, let me check where it is. It's here in File. It's add environment. No, that's not publish. Where is it? Include JavaScript library. It's disabled now because I'm using DB360 here, or a specific dynamic thing, so I can use it. But with include JavaScript library, if you open this, you can see a bunch of JavaScript libraries that you can use. Please include it at the very beginning. Later, it won't do. So you remember the page where we were adding some events. So for example, if a user is clicking on the tab area, it could also be, we could also add easily code instead of changing timeline, Google Add or something like that. There is a part which says customized. And with customized, maybe let's do this. If I just get rid of the click-through, let's make it, if I touch on the banner, touch click, I don't want to fire exit now. I want to add some customized code, add customized action. And what I can do is now here, say hello, and okay, worst thing is of course saying hello world, but we're doing it with alert here. It's just for demonstrating that you can use whatever you like in JavaScript and add your own code with Google Web Designer. If I click here now, you can see hello world, the JavaScript is working. So actually, we can create our own code and edit here. So what else can we do? Of course, we have so many fancy things. First of all, it's important that each you can see it said GWD say hello. This is my function, and you can see now that this is closed. Means this is within brackets, and means if you create a variable like this, it won't be available in other types of code. That's why it's always good. There's a global variable or global object which is called GWD. Just add your variable or your functions as dotted behind as an extra sub-object of GWD. For example, what I'm always doing, this is maybe best practice, add all the variables as a container into GWD.globalVars initial. If it's already existing, just use it. If it's not existing, just create it. And then I could say, for example, GWD globalVars.username is Patrick. No need like for a new or something like that. Just or var GWD is not necessary anymore. Just add it to globalVars, and then you can use it in all those functions that you needed. Current page, user has clicked through, so all those functions that can be used. And also create your own function, GWD globalVars.user has clicked, and then whatever you need to do. So of course, there's also a GWD API. So you could see that if I click on the banner, I could pause or toggle and play the timeline. And of course, you can also do this manually. If I click on an exit, for example, most of the time publishers also want that the timeline is paused. So there are two options. I could click, I could create two events. One is for opening the exit, going the doing the click-through, and then I create the same event again, but in this case, the action will be pausing the timeline. This can be done with the events panel, but I can also do one in my own custom code. So for example, in this case, I would say GWD actions timeline dot pause, and then call here the name of the timeline, if it's a subtimeline or the main timeline, and then stop it on my own and add other things. Play, pause, go to and play, go to and pause. So I have to hurry up a little bit now. Then, of course, I can move to different pages with all the transitions. You can see later, but I will also try to share parts of this of the deck later. So you will, and also if you have a look at the Google Web Designer Help Center, the API is also completely visible there, so you can check about all the options. Then if it's a Google ad and you need some additional page tracking, for example, if you want to check. So the difference between page deck, go to page, and Google ad page tracking is that with page deck, you can just move to another page. And if you use the same go to page at Google ad, then it will also be tracked that a user has clicked on something and has visited the other subpage. Also, there are other standard trackings. For example, if you want to count something, how often a user has done something, then there is increment counter. This will be visible in reporting, like the enabler actually does. If you want to measure how long the user is doing something on a specific page, then you can start timer and stop timer. And if the user, for example, has an interstitial and wants to close it or floating, then you can also report manual close and close the banner. Exits are several ones. There is exit, the standard one. You just give it a name and say which URL and so on. There's also exit override, which is a little bit more flexible. For example, if you're using dynamic exits, means if the exit doesn't always go to the same web page. For example, if you're doing retargeting or remarketing, and then for different products, that will be updated depending on what the user has seen before. Of course, he should see another website. Then you just use exit override. This will override the existing exit. Then, of course, all the galleries, and this is maybe a little bit more interesting. You have full control for each gallery, swipeable gallery, carousel gallery, or GWD 360 gallery. We have go to frame so that it's jumping to several frame. We will see a nice example for this later. Go forward, go backwards, and so on. Rotate once throughout the whole images, or stop rotation. This is really useful. Also, the rich media players with the standard playing options: play, pause, mute, replay, and seek for a specific point of this video stream. So, and now finally, we are getting into creating a little game with Google Web Designer. Let me just drink something. Actually, you can download the assets at www.html5advertising.de/downloads/treasurehunter_assets.zip if you want to follow this tutorial. So now I'm excited because this will be live coding again. And if I will screw something, then it's now the time. So going back to, where is Google Web Designer? My computer's checking me all the time. So don't save. At the very beginning, you have to download the assets, of course. And then we start. So I'm rushing through this now. I call this now Treasure Hunter 2018. I make this now a non-Google ad because maybe this will be copied on my website later. I make it a custom size. The width will be 640 pixels to 140 pixels. It's just a small mini skyscraper version. I go to advanced directly. So this is my stage. First of all, I need to rename my page from page to start page because this will be my initial screen. Let me check where I have all my assets. Treasure Hunter here. It's just actually 4 assets that I need. It's the cave that I drag on the stage. So let's see if I get this managed a little game within 20 minutes. And I keep the other assets on the Finder so far. What I'm doing now is I invent a name for my game and write it here on my text field. I call it Treasure Hunter. Search for a fancy font. This is what you already know. This is easy. I found this font very attractive here. Let's see if I found. Yeah, this makes sense. This looks like a horror game or like Indiana Jones a little bit. Make it kind of orange, yellow, greenish, or whatever. Make it full size. Make it centered. A little bit larger. Come on. Okay, this is. Makes sense for, okay, this will be our very, very basic start screen. Then, of course, I need an exit area because if I click on the button, then the game should start. So actually, we have a start screen and we have a game screen. So let me just make this our button start. And position is full covering. Just rushing through. If you have some questions, please add them in the comments, or later, maybe we have some 5 minutes later where I can ask, or you can ask some questions. Stage, okay, button start, makes sense. Now I create a new game screen, a new one. Sorry, my fault. A new one. I just go back to the first screen, copy this image, and put it here. So this I've done not with mouse, but sorry, with shortcuts on my keyboard. So background, cave. So, and what I'm doing now is immediately go back to the, wait, give it a name. This is the game, start page and game. Now I go back to the start page, and if the user is clicking on the tab area, it should move to our game. Going to the events, you've seen this now 2 or 3 times during the tutorial, during the session. Button start, tab area, touch click, in the page deck, go to page, game. And in this case, we want to make it slide from the top. Another preview. If I click on it, okay, this is how our game will somehow start. Okay, so now let's add our player sprite. So for our player, it's important to know that you've seen in the preview of the banner that I was using keyframe animations. And actually what I'm doing is I'm using the sprite sheet component. The sprite sheet component is just actually an image which has many, many images on it. And to use this, I can, sorry, wrong screen. I need this on the game page, of course. Here it is. This is just for overview now that you can see that we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 animation frames. And I will now animate this guy. I just keep it on the screen for a better overview. We will delete this later. That's why I create, first of all, I create an empty container. This is where our treasure hunter will walk later. So just to make it right size, this will be our player. And the size will be from left to right, from left 35 pixels, from top 75, 70 pixels. Width is 600, so the guy will walk 600 pixels. And the height of this is one. Okay, good. So now I double click on it so that we have kind of a sub-movie clip. And I add now the sprite sheet component. Sprite sheet component is actually, where do I find it here? If I drag this on the stage, I define the size, how the whole sprite sheet should look like. First of all, I give it a name. I call this now stolen from an infamous name called Indiana. This will be our player. And the position will be, of course, 0, 0. It should start from the very left. And the size should be 30 pixels and 48 pixels, because this is the size of each frame here. So what can I do now in the attributes of the sprite sheet component? First of all, I load the source. It's banner demo, treasure hunter, Indiana Bones, to prevent some naming issues. So you can't see it's barely visible. It's already seen that it's from the top to 30 pixels to right, 64 pixels to right, and to the height. So what we're doing now is we want to show the first screen. The first screen is actually the offset. This is what we've seen here on the original image. Is I've written it down here. Is, come on, where is it? I have the data. Let me check from my paper what the size is. Actually, here's our sprite sheet again. The offset will be 59 pixels from the left, will be 0 pixels from top. It will be the first frame. And it will be frame width is 30 pixels, and the frame height is 48 pixels. The alignment will be bottom because it should walk on the floor. Let's take this Y bottom on the center. And you can see now that it's changing. I can see the attributes are right. The slice part, the cut it out part, is already the first screen. So what else can I do is now I can already animate it. In the advanced properties, I can say number of frames is, we counted 30 before. The duration between each frame should be, let's make it 25 milliseconds. It's a good number. And the number of loops should be, let's keep it 0, for example, to see it in live action animating. And when it ends, it will end on frame 1 again, so it's standing. Let's have a look how this looks like in our browser. If I click on it, nothing happens. Let me check why. Autoplay, I need to enable autoplay. Let's preview again. I start the game, and it's running. Maybe a little bit running too fast. So maybe reduce this from 25 to 50. Let's check again the preview. Click on it on the game. Yeah, this looks properly now. Let's see if this works. Maybe a little bit faster, because this is action. He shouldn't walk like he was hacking. So number of loops is just 1 now. He should just walk once at the very beginning. So now let's get back to the main stage, first of all. And we create now all the walls that you've seen. You remember there were some walls from the top dropping down, and this is what we're doing now. We create once more an empty container. This size, well, we don't need this anymore, this image. We can delete it from stage. So this is our new container. I will call this wall 0. It's the first wall. The size will be from the left 140 to from the top. And the size is 62 pixels. And the height should be 121. Sorry for this. I was using really weird sizes. Would have been better if I would have chosen maybe 60 pixels width and 100 pixels height. So I called it already wall. Now I'm double click again to make it a sub movie, a sub container. And here I'm dragging the wall on the stage. put it to 0, 0, and call this now wall. So now I want to animate this now. I moved the wall 8 pixels to the top at the very beginning. Beware on the translation and not on the position and size. So this is initial animation here. And for right click, I'm animating this now. After 1 second, it should drop down. And this is going back to 0 pixels. And this should be, of course, ease in, ease out. So you can see it's dropping down. Badam. Okay, another keyframe. It should move back again to the top, minus 80 pixels in the Y direction again. Also ease in, out. So it's jumping on, bam, and going back again. And because there should be also something like a break, it shouldn't go down immediately again. We create another keyframe here and keep it just in this position. So actually we have the following animation. We have going down, going up, wait, and then from the beginning repeat. So what we are doing now is adding some events. This is something that I haven't introduced today before. So there is a label at 0 seconds. This is like a go-to and play thing where I can then jump. So I create a label and I call this start. And I create a label at 2 seconds where it ends actually. And this is where actually the waiting time begins. So if I have some random function later, I can jump now to wait. So it will jump here, and then the wall won't do anything, or it goes to start and then goes up, down, and then will crush our hero. Hopefully not. So then, of course, at the end, there won't be a label. There's now an event. Means I want to check later if the wall is down, if my superhero here is under the wall. That's why I need an event here. And I call this event at edit event marker name. I name this event wall is down. Wall is down. And I need another event at 3 position. This will be custom code a little bit later. This is where everything needs to be repeated again. So edit marker name is here. I call this restart, because when we here, it's restarting, either waiting, restarting, or restarting the whole up and down process. Okay, now I call the events. I want to add those events now. I just focus on the events on my current page. I add a plus here. And now I create an event for wall 0, which is my container. Wall is my image. Wall 0 is my container. So, and the timeline is, if it's on at restart, as restart, this is the position at 3 seconds. At restart, the timeline should go to and play, jump within the animation slot wall 0 to start again. This is here at the very beginning. Okay, so let's get back on the main stage, or let's have a quick preview how this looks like now. I click on it, down, up, and 1 second wait, down, up, 1 second wait, down, up. So it's an eternal animation actually. Actually, I could have done an external animation also by clicking here and click on infinite, but I want to have a little bit more control on this animation. That's why I do it with JavaScript. So now what I'm doing is I just have created one wall. I want to have many of them. That's why if I go on the main stage again, I just right-click on this one and say create group. And now I call it create group. Come on. I call it wall. And what I can do now is, if I have a look at the library again, you can see that there's our group wall. I can just drag it on the stage, and we'll have exactly the same behavior as all the others. This is really useful if you're doing something like that. Let's have a look how it looks on the screen. Down, and wait, and down. Okay, so it works. Even the events work. So I need some more walls. In total, we want to have 5 more. So in total, we will have 6 ones. So, okay. Now I set the positions. I don't need a library anymore. Collapse tab. So 50 minutes ago, this will be easily solved until then. So the first wall is my wall, which I name now wall number 1. This is important later for our collision detection if our superhero is under the wall or not. Wall underscore 1, positions 140. I put this now to 200. And 260 from, check, no, it's okay. From top makes sense. So no, sorry, my fault. The first is 140. The second one is 60 pixels to the right and is also on 0, so it's really close to it. This is wall 2, of course. Wall number 3 then will be 260 plus 60 is 320, and also on 0. Ah, come on, my fault. This should be 260. The next one is 320. 320 and 380, and the last one 440. Now also on 0, this one on 0, and this one on 0. Now giving the last names. Wall 1, 2, 3, wall 4. Don't mess up with the wall names because we need this later. Wall 5 and wall 6. Let's have a quick look at a preview in the browser, how it looks like. Okay, sounds good. Looks good. Looks good. We can use it. Of course, at the moment, because all moves are at the same time moving, our superhero doesn't have any chance. So we are now going to animate our player. That's why for this, we need a variable. So if we are moving our player from position to position, we need a variable which actually saves the position. Means this is position 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And that's why we need to create a variable where we save the current position of the player. So in this case, we define the position to GWD player position at -1 at the moment. This is -1, position 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, -1 at the beginning. And every time, of course, this variable also needs to be changed back to -1 every time we end up at the start screen again. That's why we go back to the start page. And ready to present page, we want to initialize this variable at the very beginning. So when the start page is ready to present the page, means before the page will be called, this little code snippet will be added, will be called and executed. So I call this GWD init, my function, and the function is GWD. Because we only have a few variables, I just added now directly to GWD to save some time with writing. So the GWD player position, oh, it's position. Okay, you're right, it's good. And I say, okay, so then back on the game page, I want to react on this. So we double click on we want to animate our superhero now. We double click on the subcontainer of player, and what we are doing is now we animate him to, let's say, for 2.4 seconds. It's each step is 0.5, 3, 6, 7. Okay, we create a keyframe at 4.2. The animation will be linear at the moment, and the position will be, it's 60, 60, 60, 60. That means at the end position will be 480 pixels. This is right? Yeah. So here he will see the treasure, and he will has survived all the walls. Now for each position, we need an extra keyframe. We add one here. We add one here. Every single 3 milliseconds. Ah, not linear. Sorry. Insert keyframe once more again, insert keyframe, and the very last one, insert keyframe. So what we're doing now is for each keyframe, this is where he actually then stops, and so we know actually where he is during the animation. So good. Now let's make every transition a little bit ease in out, because this looks better in animating. Never do, if you're doing animation, try to avoid linear animation as often as possible. Ease in out, ease in out, ease in out, ease in out. Here we are. And now what we're doing also is add some new events. So here's our first event, our second event, because there we have to figure out if our player is under the wall or if he is somewhere else. So for each keyframe, we add event here. Also the last one. All of them are now named like event 1, 2, 3, or 5, 7, and so on. It is okay now because we know from the position where it is. It's just to save a little bit time here. So what we're doing now is I go to the events panel and create the next event. So for player, in the timeline, our event will call a customized script. And this customized script I call move right, because this is where I have moved my player to the right. So for GWD, the player position, of course, then will be updated. And also the player needs to be paused. You know, at the moment, it's like the player is running from left to the right, and I want to pause him now. And only if I click on it, the animation should continue. So GWD actions.timeline, this is part of the API that if I have access to one of the components, I always need GWD action.action, not actions, not action, sorry, timeline, dot pause player. So if I click, this is like combining now, I add my position and at the same time I pause my player. I have to do this now, unfortunately, for each event. So player, I'm running through player event 2, customized, move right is okay. And the same for, this is annoying part of showing this now, event 3, customized, move right. I'm trying to run through as fast as possible, make it a little bit more visible here. So player, event 4 is coming, event 4, customized, move right, okay, and so on and so on. Luckily, we're just using 6 walls and not more. Event 5, customized, move right, just 2 lines of code, by the way, so far. 3 with initial variable, player, timeline, event 6, customized, move right, and then finally for the last one, no, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, yes, and for the last event, this is this one, timeline. Did I use a 7th one? No, I don't need an 8th one, I guess. Sorry, I was doing one too many. The customized code will be that I don't need to customize code. I just go back to the start screen. Page 7 is, event 7 is actions, page deck, go to page, start screen, start page. And let's make this fading now. And 1 second is okay. Let's check if this is event 7. Events, I messed something up. Okay, sorry for that. I don't know what I was doing. So this event 7 is still, my fault, is still moving. Come on, come on. Timeline, here we are. 7 is customized, move right. Sorry, that was a useless minute for you. And now finally, last one, event 8 is page deck, going page on the start page again, fading, and that's it. Okay, so at the moment, if we have a look at our game, just saving, if we look at our game, it doesn't do anything else. It's just prepared. So it's just moving there, and then I cannot do anything, but it has moved to the first screen. So what I need to do is now, because it's always pausing, I need to add a tab area again. And each time the user clicks on the tab area, then the user will play, will go on with the animation. So this is what we're doing now. I go on the main stage. I use the component tab area again. And you see how often we're using this. This is really useful. This is our button play. So he will play the user. Play full screen size, of course. 100%, 100%. And we call the events over here. If the user is clicking on button play tab area, then the timeline should move. Play of the player, right? And also, what we need is the players just moving without using our keyframes. Let's check this. Moving, moving, moving. We need also to animate, and that's why we're using the Sprite API. That's why for the same button play, we go for the Sprite action and say we replay our animation for Indiana, and that's it. So let's check how he's walking. So I see from the time that I might be maybe use 5 minutes longer. Sorry for that. Animating, walking, 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 and we have arrived, and the game is solved. Okay, so what we're going to do now is a little bit add 2 codes. So this is very short now. We will have the game finished within 2 minutes. So what we're doing now is I double click on one of those walls. Here we are. And what we're doing now is I create an event. Wall is down. I use the, which one of both? Let me check. I guess it's this one. Timeline, wall is down. Yes, it's right. Timeline, wall is down. And I add some customized. So as customized code, I want to now figure out the collision, if collision test between our hero and our wall. So first of all, what we're doing is I want to get the name of the wall where I'm at the moment of each wall. So if the wall is at the bottom, I want to know if it's wall 1, 2, 3, or whatever. That's why I ask for event. Event is saves our object here. Event dot current target. This will be our wall parent element, because there we save the name of wall 1, 2, 3, or whatever. And there we take the ID and use the substring. Means we want to get rid of WALL underscore, and we just want to get the number. And then, of course, it makes sense to parse into this. We just have the number of the wall. Then we want to check if the ID that we just figured out is the position of our player. That's why we ask for, that's why we compare if ID is the same like the GWD player position. And if so, then we want to pause our player. We do this with GWD actions.timeline and pause player like we did before. We don't want to run him through. And then also go back to the start screen again, GWD actions.gwd page deck, go to page deck anymore. This is something that you've seen in the slide transition. The duration should be 1 second. And where we need this now for animation, usually we don't need for fade, but the variables will be needed for the fully working function. And let's check this now. If I run under a wall, if I will die or not. Run, run. No, there is something like an issue. Well, let's have a check what I was doing wrong. I guess in the console there was, check this here. Maybe I was doing go to page of undefined. Okay, there was something like an coding error. GWD page deck. Page deck is a small, must be a small d. Okay, sorry for that. Let's check if it's working now. Walk, 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 bam. Okay, so this is where we've lost. Very simple. Of course, we could do an animation and show something different also. The last thing that we need to do, because now it's really hard to play, is that instead of going restart event, our restart event that we're having here, what was it? Restart here. We want to add some custom code and make it random. Means a new one, and I call this random wall action. So in here, what I'm doing is now I use a variable RND, which is called random. I just make it easy with the parse int math.random. Just two options, wait or replay. Math random is everything. Yes, in, good. So, and if, this is very basic now, if random is 1, then GWD actions.timeline go to play. What we're doing is now, if go to end play, if it's 1, then it should wait, and if it's 0, then it should go down again, the wall. So it's wall, wait a minute, wall 0, and the jumping marker, the label will be wait. Just copy and paste this. Else, copy paste this. Instead of wait, go to start. So this is our random, and let's have a look how it looks like now. The walls should behave now totally different after the first one. Yeah, it does. So I can play now. Lost. Okay, and once more again. I need to do it once. Okay, now, okay, last one. I will get it, promised. Checking first. Got it. Okay, so this is when I win. Okay, a very, very basic game that you've seen here now. Yeah, so for the last 5 minutes, let me show you some examples that can be created with Google Web Designer API and Google Web Designer without adding a lot of code. For example, what can be done is a very fancy banner for Pizza Pazza, where the users can, where you as a developer can use the components and use them in a sensible way or a smart way. For example, when it has been loaded, a banner like this, where the advertiser is asking, how does a perfect pizza look like? For example, if you order one, or if you want to sell some frozen pizza, first of all, do you like tomato sauce or white cream sauce? Let's take tomato over here. What I was doing is just having here 2 images and a tab area, and then move to the next page where the tomato sauce is already rendered in the image. Then I have a swipeable gallery with all the ingredients that I can just drag and use, just simply use this on the next page. I take salami, of course, and flip to the next page where salami is visible. And I want to have another ingredient, for example, bacon. And then it will show me also as a swipeable gallery or as a 3D swipeable gallery, the different versions that I can buy, which all the pizzas have salami and bacon on it, for example. Easy doing. Of course, takes a little bit of time, but this can be solved within 2 or 3 hours, the full banner. Then another banner that I could show you is, I told you before that I can use set index, rotate, and so on. With this, you can easily create 3D banners, like this one that I've done some years ago for the Nexus 5X, for example, where I click on it. I move the mouse cursor, and depending on the position it is moving, I can see it from every side. Then, of course, within the 3D object that I've created here, I've also added a swipeable area, because if I swipe now in here, even the galleries work in the 3D environment. I can use it like a real phone, like this one, for example. This is a little bit fun. Of course, I can also use the YouTube layer, like here, and use and use maybe also Google Maps. Well, it doesn't work anymore. I told you that you need a key. I don't have a key for it, but you could also use the Chrome browser and show iframes, something like that. Actually, there's a video on YouTube. If you check the video, you can see how the banner was developed with, honestly, just within 45 minutes. Then what else do we have? We have, for example, the Jackpot game, the slot machine, where there's a link below where you can see we can download the GWD project files and check how it is. This is actually just 3 swipeable galleries turned to 90 degrees from top down, and a tab area which just tells them create 3 random numbers and then rotate once and stop when the number has been achieved. And as soon as there are 3 exactly same numbers, come on, then there should be an animation with some coins jumping out. Coins, 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 coins. Yeah, here it is. And then this is just coins, an animated GIF. Then that would it's a sprite sheet component that will restart and show the coins jumping out. So a smart way to use the components in a different way. What else can be done is, for example, something that 2 or 3 years ago, my team and I were trying to get to the most out of Google Web Designer. So we are creating something like the winter games or the summer games, maybe from the Commodore 64 or Amiga. So we're doing a lot with sprite sheet work, and it's also responsive, as you can see here. Fully responsive, can also be played on a mobile device, and creating some games like, for example, ice skating with the swiper, but not with a gesture component. There's a short explanation, and I have to swipe left, right, left, right, like the joystick games years ago on the Commodore. And depending on if you find the right rhythm, it's actually just a variable which checks if he has swiped left or right and then continues the animation. And so you can do some small funny games that can also be used maybe for advertising. The other player, by the way, is just a basic animation, which is always nearly the same time that he will use. And then we have dependent on if you have one and another frame, which shows the finalist and so on. And then another example that you can actually also download is this example that I really like a lot. This is just if you're advertising a watch, for example, you can see the watch and watch the watch from any perspective. And also, which is maybe what is cool, is if you click on it, it has like explosion one. So I just animated each of the animations, each of the assets, and in a 3D environment. And so we're able to also, if I turn the screen, for example, on a mobile device, I can have a closer look and so on. And we're trying to add the mirroring and so on. So with Google Web Designer, of course, it took a little bit longer than average banner, but you can do really, really fancy and cool things about. And another example is this one with Google Web Designer. This took a little bit more code than I expected first, but this is a full 3D game, actually, if I use it here. Everything has been created just in 3D in Google Web Designer. It's an image on the floor, and you can see how amazingly fast it is. Of course, it's a live stream. It will be a little bit flickering, but on my screen, it's really, really fast. And you can drive around by us getting the key codes and so on. And this is done with Google Web Designer. And actually, this was one of the first projects I was doing. And this is where Google Web Designer awed me away. It was really jaw-dropping how fast you can go on mobile devices and desktop computers just with Google Web Designer's animation. Full screen. What else can be done with Google Web Designer if you're really good into it? You want to one day have the dream or the idea to create a real app. And together with Adobe PhoneGap, which is a free tool, you can really create this. Just let me show you the single steps. We will rush through. If you want to recap it and do it on your own, just watch the screens. Also on html5.advertising.de, there will be a tutorial soon how to do this. So first of all, you will need the PhoneGap desktop app and develop a mobile app on your mobile device. This is just for testing. If you don't want to test, PhoneGap desktop app is enough. You can download it at phonegap.com/products. And it is available for Windows, for Mac, for all the necessary operating systems. Then you have to go to Adobe and create Adobe developer account. There's a free plan, which means it's reduced functionality, but you can still use it for creating your own app. You sign up for the plan at build.phonegap.com/plans. And then actually you download the project template from, this is the one that I've created. It's a GWD project file, which is compatible with Adobe PhoneGap. Just download this zip and open it. And then you will see this following structure. It's a little bit different than to the standard GWD files. If you then open the index.html, in Google Web Designer, this will work. This is how it will look like. This will be fully responsive because we don't know which size the screen will have. So be a little bit more flexible, use more percentage when positioning things and align them. Just create whatever you like. This is the fourth step. And then when it's about testing, this is how it looks like actually. When it's about testing, actually, in the PhoneGap desktop app, it's just a small window. You execute your GWD project by clicking on the plus here, and then opening an existing PhoneGap project, what we're doing here. And then we open the index here, the project file. I say open here. I just need a folder. I don't need the full project file. And then you can see it has been loaded here. And you can see on the green here, it's servers running on, and it says an IP address. And this IP address, you should note it down somewhere, because when you then run the app, and you, this is where it's written down here. Yeah, and when you then run the mobile app, this is how the app looks like. You have to put in the IP address here in this field. And then as soon as you have assigned it, then you can test your full screen app directly on your mobile device. Of course, only just using this is a complicated way to provide your app. It's way easier. For example, if you then zip the whole project folder, if you're finished, and upload your zip as a private app to builds.phonegap.com in apps, like here. New app, open new app, and then update the code and load the zip file here. Then you can create your app and download the APK and actually spread it or upload to Google Play Store for Android. For Android, it's easy. For iOS and Windows Phone, you definitely will need a developer key that you have to get for free before to publish it through app stores. But you know, the Android, if you go for Google Play, you also need a key. But if you want to provide it on your own website as download, you can just spread it via email, also the APK file. If the people then download it, they can use directly the app on the screen on your mobile device like a real app. And be aware that the free plan only allows you one app at the same time to develop, which means if you create a new app, you have to temporarily save the old app somewhere else and regenerate it. It's a little bit pain in the workflow, but it's for free, which is even great. So this is the PhoneGap website actually looks like. And if you, for example, take a picture in your own account of this QR code, then you can directly download the APK and figure out how this banner, how this app actually looks like. So finally, what's next? Within the next release, still 10 seconds to go, I will use them fully. There will be a parallax format, which is amazing. You can see a quick demonstration here. Let's go into the next release of Google Web Design. Let me show you how this looks like. This is really amazing, easy to do, and easy to solve for the next generation of mobile websites. Let me check the folder. Yeah, this one. So there will be a new component that you can see here. It's under MISC, I guess. No, where is it? Interaction, where is it? Where is it? Come on, Patrick. Parallax. Parallax display in video only. So this will be a new format. I've dragged it already on the stage and added the images. And this is how it actually works. You have a start screen and you have an end screen. And everything what you're doing, these are all the assets that you load in here. It's now just to make it very short here. These are the assets here. You can move them around. For example, the airplane should maybe end up here at the end screen. And then you have a preview. You just define the first and last position. And then you go up and down. You can see how it actually, the airplane is elevating a lot. And all the travel targets like New York, Abu Dhabi, and so on are also moving. Of course, it's only a small animation. That's why let's put the airplane here again. And maybe also put Abu Dhabi a little bit more here, that it's running, really rushing through. Where's Abu Dhabi here? It's vanishing. Okay, so you can see then in the preview, and also this is if you scroll then on the website, scrolling down, you can see how the everything is moving up and down depending how the users are moving their websites. And you can do fancy things with that, like for example in this animation, another one. Wait a minute. Closing is maybe easier. The sports one, where if we preview this, we can also preview in the browser, by the way. We'll preview this. You can see that the players in the background are moving and the balls are moving. For example, this little ball here over there, and the ball here that the guy is kicking away. So this is a really easy developing format. And if the assets are already prepared and are perfectly done before, and you have all the transparencies and so on, you can easily create this banner within only a few minutes. So thank you very much. I hope Google Web Designer is now worth having a look. And for those when you signed up who already had a look some years ago, maybe it's now worth for you having a second look, because it has evolved intense. It is really, really big. It has really, really become a really, really cool tool for animation. And also, as introduced before, you are not bound to the Google marketing platform. You can use it for any advertiser, for any ad server, or even just use it for your own mobile games, your own apps, or use it for your own websites. Thank you very much. Finally, I'm out now. Thank you.